That's a bad thing. Okay, can everyone hear me online? Cool. So to review, today we're going to be going over strings. Strings are basically sequences, and they're sequences of char, right? So sequences of characters. We're going to look at some basic string operations, and then string formatting and some string methods that you can use to make your strings look good. So the basic string operations are these. They have all the standard sequence operations. You have the common sequence operations all work with strings because strings are sequences. So indexing, slicing, multiplication, membership, length, minimum, and maximum will all work with strings. Min and max doesn't, I don't know if you use that much with a string, but the other ones are pretty common. One thing to note is strings are immutable. So that means that once you define a string, you actually don't change it. It's going to look like you're going to change it a lot, but really what you're doing is you're always making a new string and assigning it to the same variable. So the variable will point to different strings, and so you can't really do any slice assignments into a string like you would with a list. So let's try this. Open up idle and say website equals http://www.python.org. And then try to slide into the, starting from the -3 position to the end. We're going to try to take .org and change it to .com. What do you get? And tell me what you get online as well.
I think I'm on the wrong virtual desktop.
What's that?
I think I'm on the wrong virtual desktop because.
Oh, it doesn't have idle?
No.
Go ahead and log out and then log back in.
I forgot my
Oh.
I always do that. I don't know why.
Yeah, try logging out of and logging back into the. It should be the CIS program. And so what we should get is an error here. And the reason is that's the part that makes it immutable. You see, you can't really modify the string. Now you could reconstruct the string and put it back in, but so you could slice out the first X number of characters and add .com, but you can't modify the existing one. And notice that website was not modified. Now you can, reassign into website. So here we're saying website equals http://www.google.com. What you're really doing here is we're creating a brand new string and assigning it into that variable. So when strings, we're often making new strings and putting them and then pointing the old variable at it. Most of the time, you're not, when you do these things, you're not really going to think about that. But every once in a while, you might get a weird problem, and it might be useful to think about that. So, one very useful feature of strings in Python is the ability to use these things called conversion specifiers. Most languages have some variation of this, differently depending on the language. In this case, with Python, notice these %s's here. Hello, %s, and s enough for you. Those %s's are basically placeholders. So we're going to declare one variable called format that has those %s's in it. And then we're going to declare a sequence called values, which is going to be a tuple with 2 values into it. So you can kind of see what's going to happen here, right? We're going to put world and hot into these 2 %s's. And so then what you do is say print format, and with Python 3, don't forget your parentheses around format and values. Let's see if I can fix that. probably be spending the rest of my life fixing Python slides, going from 2 to 3.
So, I don't see the option to actually get to the select the virtual desktops. There's like an application here, but it doesn't actually work.
Double click on that. I think you're dragging it. Right click on it. Oh, there it is.
I did it like 20 times.
Now you probably get 30 screens or so.
Yeah, you're right. Here it comes.
So after you finish spamming yourself, then
Another one's coming.
it's probably because these things are kind of small that they're processing. You might be having a lag right now. So once you print, notice that what happens is where the %s is. So the way this is you have format, which is your string, and then you have values, which is your sequence. And what it does, it takes the first element and we'll put it into the first %s here, and take the second one and put it in the second %s here. Does that make sense? And if you're in other languages like C++ based languages, it's usually a curly brace, 0 close curly brace. Other languages have other formats. Here it's %s. Now there's more, so that creates a problem. Let's say that we want to actually display a % sign in our string. Well, in order to do that, we put 2% signs. It's kind of like with escape characters, you put 2 backslashes in order to get a single backslash. With percents, you have to put 2%. Let's try this. Say format equals pi with 3 decimals, %.3f. And then say from math import pi, and then say print format %pi. Notice now the thing after the percent is only one element. If you only have one element, one conversion specifier or one format specifier in your format, you don't have to put in a tuple or a list. You can just put one item on it like that. Like we should get 2.142. Did it truncate or did it round? Everyone have pi memorized to 10 characters? 1.1596 is usually 1.14159. So that rounded it. Is it? Have you restarted?
It's loading.
You might want to jump over to the other machine. It's faster. Did that work online? So between those two, there's a lot of format specifiers, but really the kinds of ones that you're primarily going to use is one, just putting things in place with %s, and two is you have a number and you want to display it to certain precision with 0.3f. That's going to handle most of your needs for format specifiers. Your book has more information than other format specifiers, and of course you can always go online and look at others. So there's a lot of different ways you can format things, but those will meet most of your needs. Make sense online? So the next thing we're going to look at are string methods. And remember, the methods are basically you take an object, like a string or an int or a float, and depending on what kind of thing it is that you're looking at, if you put a dot after its variable name, there's different functions that are available based on what it is. Your Python documentation and appendix B in your book has a list of string methods. We're going to look at a few of them. So try this one. Say with a moo here and a moo there, find moo. So the find method is basically returns a number. What do you suppose that number represents?
Except the number is having you say found it, because otherwise it would be 4, but.
So let's look at where this M shows up. W is 0, I is 1, T is 2, H is 3, space is 4, A is 5, space is 6, the M is at index 7. So it's returning the index number in the character where this sequence starts. Now that's just now how is that different from the index method that we looked at before? Would index work here? Dot index. If you want, you can try it. Just copy, paste it, replace it with index. So index instead of find.
I don't think it would work.
Yeah.
It's just the move, you're doing 3.
Yeah, is moo really an element of each one of that sequence? No. Since that's a sequence of characters, moo is not a character, it's 3 characters.
But if you did and, it would it work?
Yes, you would find M,
Yeah.
but that may not be what you're looking for. So with strings, you kind of have to have this special function to find a string within a string. And then try this one. Title equals Monty Python's Flying Circus. Title.find Monty. And you get 0. And then try title.find Python. What do you
It
get?
should be 6. It's just counting each one, correct?
Yep, and remember, it's always 0 indexed, right? Everything in Python is 0 indexed. So then that brings up, and then we can try flying. And we get 15. And then try to find Zirkus. If you got bored with the other 2 after we've gotten that gate, you can just go straight to the last one. But that's obviously not a word that's in there. What does it return when it doesn't find it?
Maybe out of range.
It could be an error. Did your computer come it up?
Yeah, it's up now, so I need to test it. Actually gives you -1. I just test out, put 1 letter in there.
Yeah. So it gives you -1. So different functions will have different results when it fails to find something. In the case of the find function, it just returns -1. So later on, we're going to learn how to do if statements. We can actually look for that. You do a find. If the return result is -1, then you know that it didn't find what you're looking for. Let's try this. Let's say subject equals get rich now with exclamation points and dollar signs. And then do a find on dollar signs. Now there's 2 of them in here. Which one do you think it's going to find?
First occurrence of it, so it should be 0.
Yeah, it's going to find the first one. And that kind of makes sense. You know, if you're, how would you read this? You would go left to right, and you would, as soon as you found it, you would stop. I suppose I could make something where it finds them all and returns a list. Maybe a function that does that, find all or something. Now try this. Say subject.find $1. And what does it return?
2, -1. Oh wait, hold on. I put S as a set of $sign.
Returns the index of the second, it looks like.
Yes, what do we suppose that 1 here in this code is representing?
It's maybe counted as the second index. It's 0, 1.
It could be that, and what this really is where it's going to start. So in this case, it's starting at index 1. If it starts at index 1, it's going to start with this second $sign, because that would only give it a chance to find a $2 sequence. It's not going to find this. It'll keep going to the end until it finds the second one.
So if it was $2 signs, the subject find $2 signs, comma 1, then it would
Return 1, yeah. So you can use, so later on we're going to learn how to do loops and conditionals. You could actually use that to find everything and return maybe a collection of all the ones it found. Now try to find the 3 exclamation points. We should get 16. By the way, you have copy and paste in idle, so it makes it a little faster. And then now we're going to look for the exclamation points between 0 and 16. So 0 is going to be this first $. And 16 is that first exclamation point. Will it include the 16 in the set that it's looking at? No, because it's always inclusive, exclusive, right? Whenever we have a range. So it's really 0 through 15. It's going to see if it can find 3 exclamation points. Will it find it in 0 through 16?
No.
No, and so we get a -1, so it couldn't find it there. So you can see you can use it all kinds of different ways, right? You can look for something, you can look for something beyond where you already found it, and then you can also look for something in a range. So there's other methods in Appendix B. Right find will actually do the search from right to left instead of left to right. Index will work with strings, but it's, you're going to be looking for an individual character. Right index actually do the same thing as index, but look from the right back. Count basically will tell you how many times something appears inside of that. So if we look for those $signs, we get an answer of 2 because that sequence shows up 2 times. Starts with and ends with is also some functions you can find, so you can look at those. One of the things I think about when I think about these types of functions in Python, I ask myself, if I'm about to do something to write code for it, as I say, did more than 2 programmers ever need to use this? If the answer is yes, there's probably a function somewhere. So then I go look for that function. So let's try this. Let's say sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a list. And then say define separator as a plus and say separator dot join sequence. Does everyone get an error? So the join function is actually a string function that only works with sequences that have strings in them. So it won't work with numbers. Rewrite it this way. Say sequence is equal to this, to a list with the strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in them. And then create your separator and say separator.join sequence. No, I think this is correct. We're going to start with a plus and then join in the sequence. So this, yep. Yeah, it's not intuitive. You normally think you take the list and then join in the plus. It's actually the other way around. we're going to take this string and then join it on this sequence. What you should get is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. What did it do with that plus?
Just kind of concatenated it or put it into the string.
Yeah, concatenate all those elements with that in the middle, right? Notice that there's not one on the end or one on the beginning. So put some between them, each one of them. So that, could you write code to do that? Yes, but it is a nice little convenient function. And to give you an example, we're going to make a tuple. Remember, if you separate something with commas, Python assumes that you mean a tuple. So create this directories sequence, and then we're going to join it on this /. So we're going to /.join those directories. And what do you get?
Puts in slash for each one. There's one before it, and there isn't one on the end though.
Yeah, why isn't there something in front of the first slash? So right here, notice that there's nothing here. Why is that slash in front of it?
Oh, because you have a
string at the
string
beginning.
at the beginning. That's fine.
What does that look like?
An actual director.
Yeah, in which operating system? No.
That I think it's Linux.
Yes, that's what a path looks like in Linux.
Yeah.
So there's actually an OS library that allows you to, in Python, to actually look up directories and do all sorts of things with the directory structure on your hard drive. So if you're a network administrator or a system administrator, Python can be really useful in this way of, like, let's say that you wanted to, you have a brand new computer and you want to initialize a directory structure, you could actually use the OS library and stuff like this to kind of just slam out your directory structure without having to go in and do it manually. I think actually that's probably what, using it for those kinds of purposes, maybe one of the best uses of Python is automating, small tasks like that. So now try this. Print C colon plus, we're going to take a double slash and join those directories.
Put in your braces for the print.
Oh, yes. Let me 3.0 this thing. Why do we have double slashes there? Anyone online know why we have double slashes in this?
So, testing.
Yes, Ronald, it's escape character. Remember, \n, \t, if you only put one, it's going to look at the next character or expect another character to convert it into something. So if we want just a single slash, we always have to put 2 slashes and escape it out. So what this does really is, this is a single slash. It's joining the directories and it allows us, so that's a Windows path. So we use the same structure to build either a Linux path or a Windows path. So if we wanted to make a little script that could automate some stuff for us. Could we make some kind of environmental variable that look at, could we maybe have our program look at the operating system, use the OS library to see what kind of operating system you're on, and then dynamically either create a Linux directory structure or a Windows directory structure, and the program will be able to tell what it was and automatically make that adjustment. Yeah, so pretty powerful. Lower. Try this. Trondheim hammer dance dot lower open close parentheses. Notice the capitalization. Put the capital marks in there and see what happens. And you should get lowercase. Now try this. This is an if statement, and from here to here is a logical expression. And what that means is if that logical expression returns true, then it will do the, if this is true, then it will do the print. Otherwise, it won't do it. So the question is Gumby in Gumby, Smith, and Jones?
No. It's capitalized.
Yeah, so go ahead and run that, and you should get nothing, right? It doesn't actually do that if. Then say name equals Gumby, names equals Gumby, Smith, and Jones, and then say if named lower in names, print founded. And notice that this is capitalized and this is lowercase. And you should get founded. This is called making a, I'll go ahead and let you type. Did it work? Did it work online? Yeah, so this is called a case-insensitive search. And probably anytime you get user input, can you rely on them using proper capitalization? If you get input from a user, can you rely on the user using proper capitalization?
No.
Can you rely on them using proper grammar? Proper spelling, proper anything. Pretty much, we can't trust the user. So, to some extent, we can fix that a little bit by lowering their input. So often what you do is if you have a sequence which you're comparing into, or that you're looking something up in, you write your sequence all in lowercase, and then you lowercase the user's input. And that way you always compare the same thing. Try this. This is a test. So now we're looking at the replace function. Say this is a test.replace is with ease. And this will feature prominently in the next program. And you should get these ease a test. So basically replace will look for one sequence and replace it with another. One of the common things that you might find Python, another great thing Python is for is cleaning data. If you go have like an office where some super users made the amazing spreadsheet that everyone uses, everyone's yelling back and forth across cubicles. You have the spreadsheet open, and often at some point people get tired of that, and so they ask the programmer maybe to turn that into an actual application. And one of the things you'll find is that because everyone's been kind of hammering on that spreadsheet, some will put some will write one code in one way, some will write another. You could use this replace method to kind of swap out and fix things sometimes. You try to get all those data fields lined up. So between the combination of all these string methods, you might be able, the capitalization, some people may be capitalizing all the names, some people may not be capitalizing some of the names. So maybe, so you can, these are useful functions for that. Python's really good at, and because Python's kind of language you can write quickly, and applications where you write code and then throw it away just to get, because you're just going to use it one time, it's a good application for using Python. Try this. Say 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5 dot split on the plus. We're going to be using that later on in the program too. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's kind of useful. Again, maybe you have some spreadsheet or something that you save as a comma separated file, you open it up. As you go through those, there may be a column that's kind of mashed together. Maybe first name and last name are together. You could maybe use the split to kind of split those names up. Try this. User bin environment split on the slash. You should get the same thing. Notice that if the slash is in the front, you do get that empty string comes back. And then using the default. Notice here, in the other version of split, we've said what we want to split on. Here, we're not telling it what to split on. So go ahead and type a sentence in and then split.
It just splits up the string.
Yeah.
For each word, because almost like let's say this is all item in the list.
Yeah, so actually, then what the split will do is it'll split on any white space character. So a space, a tab, a carriage return, any of those, it'll take those and split it on. So it's kind of useful for breaking a sentence up into individual words. Going on with the idea of cleaning data, try this one. And you don't have to write it as big as this, but make a sentence with some spaces in the beginning and the end, and then put dot strip. And what you should get is, notice that the internal white spaces are kept, but the external, the ones on the right and the left are removed. This is often very useful for cleaning data because a lot of times people will put in data, they might put a final space on the end before they hit enter, or even sometimes put a leading space. So if you're doing comparisons of string data, you probably want to strip the leading and trailing spaces off. And then try this. Make names equals Gumby, Smith, and Jones. You may have that earlier on in your code. Say name equals Gumby with a space at the end. And then see if name in names print founded. You can probably copy and paste that one in. And so it won't find it because Gumby here doesn't have a space, but the name that we're looking for has a space. But if you say name.strip in names, then it will find it. Now, one of the things I often do is I will use these. You can actually use these one after the other. So you can do name.strip.lower. So you can, because the return type of strip is a string, you can then apply lower to it to then lowercase it, and you can put all these in and just clean the whole user's input before you do a comparison. Then try this. Spam for, put asterisk, 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 space, spam, asterisk for asterisk, every everyone, exclamation points, and then some asterisks, and then say dot strip, and then pass in a string with the things that you want to strip out from the beginning and the end. And what you should get is spam for everyone. The way this works is it looks at the thing that you pass into the strip function, and it takes the first character from the left, says that's an asterisk. Is that inside of this sequence that I passed in? Well, there's an asterisk in here, so I'm going to remove that and go on to the next one. And now we'll get rid of this other two asterisks, and then we have a space. Well, there's a space inside of this string in here, so it gets rid of that. Then it gets to the S. S is not included here, so it's done on the left. And then it goes from the right, does the same thing. Those asterisks are there, the space is there, the exclamation points are there, but then the E is not in there, so it stops. And so going from the left and the right, it cleans up everything. So if you want to remove special characters or punctuation, you could use that. Okay, let's try this. From string import make trans. Make trans is, so there is a string library that has some additional functions. And so we're going to import the make trans function, and then table equals make trans, and we're going to convert CS to KZ. And then this is an incredible test dot translate table, and it will take all the S's and convert them to Z's, and all the K's and all the C's and convert them to K's. I don't know how often you would need to do this. Maybe some data cleaning operation, but yes.
Give me an error when I try to import from string import make trans.
Does everyone have the same thing? Check the spelling of make trans. Maybe that's. Huh, maybe it's not there anymore. Yeah, that might be just another thing. I can see them getting rid of it because, I mean, how often do you need to do that? It might be a different library. So I'll skip through that. So anyway, so those are the string functions. And next time we'll go over, let's see, today is the 29th. Yeah, so next time we'll go over, we're going to do some more stuff with strings, and we'll go over program 2. And so the rest of this is lab time. If you need help with your program, let me know. We are working on the state table, and so remember that one. You're going to get a sequence of states, use the index function to find the state the user input. Once you have that index number, then you can use that to get the values out of the other lists and display the results.
There's only 10 cities, or?
And you only need to do 10. You only need to do 10 states worth of information. I'll be convinced by then that you have it. It's actually not hard to do the 50. What you do is you basically find someplace where it's nicely separated value information. You just copy and paste it creatively in your Python. But if you do 10, that convinces me that you could probably make it work. Okay. Any questions online? Can you hear me online? Okay, cool. So that's all I got for today for the presentation. The rest is lab time. If you want to give a question, you can click on Share Content and Share Application Screen, and then I can see your screen and answer your questions.
think this has a, oh, it does have a microphone in it. So that's-
Yeah, I was thinking it could be useful if people have trouble seeing the screen. They can project that way and you can see like, you can, but it's better if there's two monitors on the table.
So what project do you usually do for the capstone?
I've had all kinds of things. I've had GIS students that have taken and pulled down satellite data, analyzed vegetation in the local area or cooling temperatures inside the city. I've had one person who made a Raspberry Pi project where he made a data collector that he threw in his brother's balloon that was going on his qualification trip that kept track of the altitudes at different points in time. And it was kind of cool because then I took his data in the game class, we put it in and we simulated that balloon flight from the data. And it had all the temperatures and everything too that he collected.
So, so we can use like Raspberry Pi, Arduinos and stuff like that?
Yeah, if you want to, you can do that. The only thing I'm looking for is that there's input, output, and some data storage, either with the file or database. And you can it could be as simple as a console-based application or a GUI application. What I primarily wanted you to do is find something that you might want to keep using later on or evolving maybe, or there might be a chance you might evolve it later. And this could be the first iteration of whatever that is. If you're interested in games, you can make a game. It can be like your first iteration of that game. There's PyArcade and or Python Arcade is one framework for 3.7, which is kind of cool. There's also the older Pygame framework. There's also a web framework out there like called Python Django, and then I think Flask is another one. So if you want to get into, going through that tutorial and making just a simple website, what I do ask is that if you're doing a tutorial, you modify it a little bit so that I can tell that you dug into it a little bit.
So do we get to choose what language we use?
Oh, for the final project?
So let's talk about capstone.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this one. No, Capstone is going to be completely different. Capstone is going to be a portfolio. You're not going to have to write any code for it. You're going to use your existing code, and you'll be able to. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a folder, which basically there's going to be several sections, and you're going to write about. You're going to do a lot of writing. So you're going to write about. You build a class. You're going to write about inheritance and polymorphism. You're going to write about writing a GUI. You're going to write about how you access data. These are all the major objectives of this. And one of the benefits of doing that is that if you have to think about it and articulate it in a written document later on when you're in a job interview, if they say, talk to me about polymorphism, you'll have already worked through it. And so you'll be able to explain those major concepts. But and then what you're going to do is give us a USB with all your existing code, and you're going to use that existing code to illustrate those concepts. So you'll take screen captures and things like that, and sections of code, and use them in your description. So I'll send that spec out this week, and then we'll set up a time next week where everyone can meet, and I'll go over the spec.
But for Python, we can use like Arduinos and well, probably Raspberry Pi since it uses Python.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna do something like that.
right on. That's cool. If you need parts, of course, have you gone down to have you been part of the hackerspace?
Yeah, in fact, I'm doing the intro to robotics.
Yes.
So that was what.
Yeah, you can kind of combine that all up, write something with some more code. One of the things you can use is that I think they have a problem with a lot of times with that is they slam together the code, right? And so when they have to modify things, they have to dig through all the code in the middle of the competition to make modifications. So, if you can help them out by using configuration files, if there's stuff like that, or make a GUI to be able to adjust settings, that could probably be massively useful.
Vex is pretty good with that. So like pretty much they already have like an automatic configuration. So they set up all your more, and if you change something, they already have like a little GUI for you.
Oh, for which thing?
Vex.
Oh, Vex,
because
yeah.
one of the competitions we're doing is Vex U robotics competition, and like for their coding IDE, or what they do is you can select what motor you want to put in there, and for the input, and it does an entire configuration for that. So it already sets it up.
So you don't have to do any coding probably, just do all kinds of configuration and it's
At
good.
that point, yeah, it does all the configuration for you, so that way you don't have to really worry about all that stuff. You just go straight into like,
Right.
say you want motor 1 to move and whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty good with that.
That's too bad because then you don't get to write a configuration file handler.
That's true, but you can always look at it. They have it there because you can always look at it and see what they do.
Yeah, if you think about it, imagine you have the program running off a configuration file, right? That sets things up. You could make a GUI, so you have making the GUI that allows you to put the settings in, and then it writes the configuration file, which it uses.
I'm pretty sure the configuration file it's like the main file is inheriting from that configuration file, or you can like get an object from it or something like that. But
yeah.
That's pretty much what it is. But.
Yeah, most likely it's written in JSON or XML, and then what it does, it pulls it in with a parser.
They write it in, I'm pretty sure it's C++, because they wrote the configuration file, I think, it was weird, because I'm pretty sure it was C++.
So the file itself was not an XML?
No.
It's just comma separated?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm almost 100% sure it was an XML. I'm pretty sure it was C++.
Or didn't, yeah.
Yeah, I think all it was doing, like the main program was just inheriting from that, or because it wasn't grabbing an object, because I didn't see anything like setting that up. But,
yeah, sometimes like C++, they'll actually have the configuration done in like a header file with a whole bunch of variable declarations. Yeah. So primitive.
Yes. So glad for C#, Python.
Yeah, you have a configuration function or library, and you can just a JSON file now and do a configuration. I mean, it's all the same thing, really. It's just a bunch of key value pairs. But then to find what to do, you might, with the codes, one of the hard things is that a lot of that stuff now takes away a lot of the coding, right? So. But there's probably something you could find with a file or database thing. Maybe you could collect telemetry in a database, little SQLite thing, when the robot moves along. You collect data, like that.
Right now, I'm trying to work on the autonomous part, because pretty much it has to find the block, find the color block, then pick up the block, and then find our base. And I think they have the bases the base and the blocks are different colors. So the colors, the blocks would be one color, multiple colors, and the base would be a different.
So you have to find.
So you have to find colors. I was thinking about doing so like it pretty much just goes around, keeps spinning to find that color. Well, first it needs to find that block.
Yeah.
Once it grabs the blocks, it'd be like a little bumper switch to tell it, hey, I found the block. Then I'll go back around, keep looking for the base color, and then drop that off. I'm just promising right now, I got to figure out how it's going to know to.
So maybe think of this. How does it know where it is? How does that robot know where it is?
That's that I'm not
That is
too
the
sure.
hardest question in the world, right? Because a lot of times, a lot of these things are written as, okay, go find this color, grab this thing, and then I go, where is the, oh, there it is. And then I go over here and I drop it off. And okay, go find the next color is, and then I go over this way. I wonder where it is. You know, I missed it, just keep spinning, spinning, spinning. Oh, there it is. And then I go, right? So it'd be interesting if it could, like, do one spin, figure out where everything is, and just go grab, you know, figure out the shortest path and then put it in.
It's pretty much do one spin. Almost it maps out the entire area,
Right.
and then from there figures out where to go.
So that's where more advanced programmers are going to try to do. Now, it'll fail miserably because the electronics and physics and everything are kind of off. So it may not be the most optimum. The brute force method might actually be the fastest because it's redundant, you know. If I miss the first time, I spin around and find it the second time. Whereas if I spin around and can't find everything, I might be spending all my time initially just spinning in circles, and my camera may have just been set too high and you can't find it, you know, it's right underneath it. So, so you have to think about things like that. But how would it, you know, what if it like spun around, got azimuth angles, right? Moved over here, spun around one time, got angles, and now it's got everything, right? So, because then it can triangulate where things are.
And that's,
roughly
yeah,
position.
I had to figure out because we only have the autonomous part is only lasts for 40 seconds, and then it's actually controlled by a person. So I had to figure out like what's the fastest way for it to do that, like score a point and everything. So I don't want to sit there for 40 seconds.
Right, spinning in circles,
around,
yes.
trying to look for a block. And
Well, that
waste
40
time.
seconds is basically your dump off points because they don't want everyone to just sit there crying as their robot just spins in circles for 3 hours. So you really want to try to get done, you really want to try to get done as you can zip around and do stuff.
Yeah.
So,
It's going to be interesting. I'm trying to get that. This is my first time actually doing autonomous like robotics.
Mhm.
So most I ever done was just controller and everything.
yeah, that's usually just building it and then
wiring
installing
it
some programs and you're kind of working, right?
Pretty much. Well, I did a little bit with Arduinos where I had to get the signal in a little bit,
Mhm.
the signal using a Bluetooth. But like I never done anything where it's autonomous where like, hey,
Yeah.
look for that. So
Yeah,
Kinda
so that's
I'm
kind of fun.
excited.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. No, you have to think a little differently.
It was pretty fun. Like right now, I only got so far. Like I assume some testing. So like pretty much it can recognize the color and then it'll open up the claw.
I still want to get my hexapod done. I can't get there yet. It's like, I need time. It's the ultimate pain. It's like, there's all these things I know I could do. And then it's like, I can't find enough capacity to get there. That's okay. I mean, I've got cool things I can stack up to go work on.
So on this program, since we can do it with only 10 states, we're gonna have to display it to the user.
Yeah, you can just break the list.
Yeah.
Now, remember that join?
Yeah.
Could we do this?
Yeah.
And that would make it neater, right?
Yeah.
Could we join on a \t or something? That would have them all out, that would be kind of weird. Or maybe just a space.
Yeah.
Comma on a space.
Yeah.
So lately I've been exploring around trying to with ASP.NET select APIs.
Yeah.
And, so pretty much RESTful, like if you have a RESTful like API,
Mhm.
so pretty much you can connect like a WPF like Windows application to like actual website.
Yeah, you make it. So you build a web API, right?
Mhm.
And you've got this thing online. Well, you can actually create a request object inside of your WPF application and send that request out to that API and get data back and display it in your API. You could also make an application in Xamarin, and you can make a phone app too. So one of my goals with my own website is I want to have my website, and then have some web APIs on there, and then make a Xamarin app, and then make a WPF app, and put those all in the same solution, but have like my web project, my Xamarin project, and then my WF project all in the same directory, and then have the model classes, which are going to be the same, put those in a library, so that they can all use those. They can use those same model objects.
So it'll be one set of models instead of like, because I was thinking like,
Yeah.
like a WPF have its own like models. I think they have a thing called MVVM for WPF,
Yes.
and then like your actual web API uses like MVC or something similar to that.
Yeah, and actually, they're all kind of like on a continuum of each other. So with MVVM, you have it's kind of like this controller thing, really. I mean, they don't say controller, but so you have this model that goes to the database, and then you have a view model that actually grabs possibly from multiple models, right? Which are all linking to database objects.
And it gets that database from the actual web API calls, right?
Yeah, so the view model then is passed to the view, which then renders the response. Or in the case of Xamarin or of WPF, the front view. So it's the difference between MVC and MVVM is that MVC is taking the model and passing one model object to the view. Well, that model may represent just one table. If you need to pull information from lots of different tables, and maybe even some things that are not in the database, you need a view model. And so if you think about it, it's like, I can draw this more conventionally. View model gets passed to the view. So your view, then you have the view model, and then this can go to multiple models, which then go to database objects.
So view model is pretty much the middleman that can get information from multiple ones in a way, correct? It passes that information from multiple models to them and then passes that into the view.
Yeah, so why do we do this? Mostly about testability. If I could actually have my view, right, the thing that renders my view, grab all this stuff directly, right? Maybe with a more MVC type approach or something. Well, that's not really fair. It's just like, let's say I just spaghetti coded in and it just grabs it. Well, how do I test this thing? It's hard to test a user interface. Because this is primarily your user interface. It's either WPF or HTML, right? Yeah, depending on. So, and actually in WPF, that's really XAML, right? So it's usually some kind of thing like that. This is hard to test. But this view model, but if I have this view model in the middle,
Makes it a lot easier to test and debug a little bit better too.
Yeah.
Since everything's been passed.
I can make an automated test off that.
Yeah.
And that's all it really is. And that's a pattern you definitely kind of want to be programming in. Is all my view does is just take the model, throw it into controls, and make a display. When someone modifies a control, it takes the modified controls and throws it into view model, and then the view model, takes care of updating all the persistent stuff. I don't have to think about it. And actually, really, the framework underneath the view model usually does that automatically for you, like whether it's React or Angular or Xamarin or whatever. It does make how you line up your code, how you line up your things sometimes be more complex than it would otherwise be. Like I was playing around with Blazor, which is the new framework, and it's like things that should be simple. I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out like one direction. It's easy to like throw things from my model to the view, but then when I'm coming back the other direction, it was like, okay, I don't have a reference for this. Where does this exist? And I'm like fighting to figure out how to get there. So mostly it's just me. I have to like play around with it long enough so I really understand it.
So you've been playing around with Blazor more, right?
A little bit, yeah. I started making one of my applications out of it for my programming blog, and I kind of halted because I got another thing working on. I went back to MVC for this other thing because I just can build faster with MVC because of the scaffolding. I can just I make a model, say build it. I got a draft. I make some modifications instead. The Blazor's not there yet.
Are more people using, like, because I'm assuming MVC is the most popular one, right?
I think people are scattered all over the place. And some people are very opinionated, so they may. I think actually the most common, probably the leading edge up until Blazor's come along has been really web APIs with an Angular front end. And then in the last couple of years, it's moved to React. So it's usually like a React front end made in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then web API to hold the data. And also to do some of the business logic stuff.
So I don't think this, unless you add in a web API, MVC is not really, I don't think it's RESTful, right? It can actually connect to like a Windows application or mobile device or something like that.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else who was doing them. They said they were doing MVC, but they're also using a lot of AJAX calls. So to me, that's probably not strictly pure MVC, which is almost everything's done on the server side. It's kind of a hybrid approach that they're doing at that point. And I think what they're doing is they're using the MVC framework to